Welcome to Inside Shopify UX. I'm your host, Lola Oyelayo-Pearson, UX Director at Shopify. At Shopify, our mission is to make commerce better for everyone. And for most of us, that means working on solutions designed for merchants. The Shop app is different. In this episode, I speak with senior UX managers on the Shop team, Katarina, Batina, and Matt Griffin. We talk about creating buyer-facing experiences, the history and design secrets behind Shop, building value for both merchants and buyers at the same time, and our answer to the rising customer acquisition costs. We also talk about brand spanking new features, such as the Shop app minis. As this is our final episode of the season, we go over our highlights and our takeaways. It has been an honor to host this season of Inside Shopify UX. Enjoy! I am delighted to host this episode with two of my favorite people at Shopify to talk serious work stuff and bant with. But also it's our season finale. So I'm delighted to be closing the season with the two of you. And I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit better. So kicking off, Katarina, tell the people who you are.
I'm Katarina Batina, Senior UX Manager in Shop, focused on the buyer experience. I've been here for a year and a half. Loving it. Matt.
Your other title though, Katarina, before we go to Matt, is bringer of the coolest neck pieces. Can we just talk about that for a second? Because I don't think I've ever been on a call with you when you're not wearing some kind of neck adornment that's like just really interesting and sophisticated and creative. It's like designer.
Says the woman with a giraffe brooch.
Oh yeah, it's a giraffe with a crown.
I mean,
I actually wore this so that I could meet the neck adornment thing, so that you leveled up my game. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, thank you. You know, I used to think that my necklace game was cool, and then people are like, "Yo, have you seen Great British Bake Off? You look like Prue." Now, Prue is, I think, north of 75. And wears the goofiest necklaces. And so now I have a total complex about being a bake show host in Britain.
But
I appreciate that you enjoy them.
And her neck is kind of cool. I mean, she's got like purplish grey hair and also...
It's a bit over the top.
Yeah, but I mean, she's on TV. If I was on TV, I'd go over the top as well. Like, why the hell not? I mean, go hard or go home, you know? Okay, we're doing this thing. Matt, tell the world who you are.
What's tragic is this is me stepping up. I put on a shirt.
Plaid shirt.
Plaid shirt.
Honorary
I
Canadian.
put on, it has a pattern. Yes. So I'm Matt. I'm Matt Griffin. I lead UX for Shop Pay. And I have been at Shopify for almost 5 years now. I moved here, Ottawa, Ontario, in Canada, in 2017, back when we moved to Canada to work at Shopify.
In the before
Lola,
times.
You were like, you slid right under the bar for that. Is that right? Yeah.
I was the last of the last of the big country movers when Office was a thing.
Yeah. So I moved in.
Lola, where did you move from?
London, mate. Moved from London. Well, actually, I have to qualify that. London, UK, because that's not London, Ontario. As I'm now learning, when I say to people London, they're like,
right.
Oh, where does your accent come from? It's like, no, not the Canadian London.
Yeah, right.
The UK London.
That's a funny accent for London, Ontario.
London, Ontario.
Huh.
Yes.
I'm just not putting it together.
There. Yes. Okay, so let's start with talking about Shop, because you both lead two different parts of Shop. And Shop is this unique thing in Shopify because, and we had Jess, who leads UX for all of Shop on the show last year. It is this one place where you guys are designing for the merchant experience, which is what the rest of us spend the majority of our time doing. And you're kind of building a buyer-facing product, right? So
What do you mean, kinda?
Well, you are. Yeah. Actually, yeah. There's no halfway house.
Right? Kinda.
Actually, in fact, building the Shop.
What are you trying to say, Lola?
Well,
Kinda.
you know. Well, let's talk about it.
I think it's both a statement of truth, a read,
yes,
if you will.
Well, yes. Okay. Snafu. There we go. Okay.
I accept your criticism.
Katarina, talk to me about the buyer experience and being somebody who is advocating for fighting, spending all of their time on that in a company where I would say 80% of our conversation is how to empower merchants first and merchant experiences. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I wouldn't think there's much to navigate. Like, I'm pretty sure merchants are in the business to find buyers, I think they call them.
Yes.
Usually.
People who
audiences,
spend the money. Yes.
customers,
Yes.
brand loyalists,
Yes.
their community. Community is a new word people love to
Yes.
talk about people who buy stuff from their brand.
Yeah.
Right? That's like the new thing.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't think it's much of a fight as it is something that's maybe new
Okay.
to Shopify. So my experience being only here for a year and a half is that Shopify's bread and butter has been being merchant obsessed. Now, to give Shopify some credit, that has to also necessarily mean understanding what buyers want.
Yes.
If we look at a product like online store, that team has, well, a collective decade of experience trying to figure out how to build themes and experiences for online stores such that buyers continue to come back and back again and shop from Shopify merchants. And what I see us doing in Shop is a natural, in some ways, an extension of that. And in some ways is doing something completely different, which is starting from a centralized buyer experience that has its own brand. That's the one crazy thing when you really think about Shopify is that it is an invisible force out on the internet. When I have to explain to most people in my life, like my parents and my family, like what Shopify is, I'm like, if you didn't buy it on Amazon, you probably bought it through Shopify. You just didn't know it.
Yeah.
And Shop is the first time that somebody's going to know that they're buying something from Shopify or Shopify brand.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And I think like where your question's heading is Shop, when you think about how Shop truly works and how we've built ourselves to this moment, we have a very interesting way of acquiring users. We trust or ask merchants to trust us by providing a really awesome service that is free package tracking. That's an immense value to merchants. They don't like having to deal with that. It's a great customer experience. And so the journey starts with a button on a confirmation email that says, hey, want to track your order? Download this app.
Yeah.
So when we talk to users now, most of them don't know how we end up on their phones, but they love having this package tracking feature.
Yeah.
Now what we're doing is saying, we want this to be a destination for people to come and start their shopping journey with merchants they already know, but also to find new merchants. And that was not necessarily, I think, something that Shopify thought it would be in the business of doing when it was started. But I think it's something we're excited to be doing now. And we're trying to do it in a remarkably different way than any of our competitors. We think we have a unique advantage in the fact that merchants consider Shopify their operational home. So there's a sense of safety, there's a sense of trust. And so our job is to figure out how to nurture that and bring them new audiences, new community, new buyers.
Do you know what I love about that? Because I want to lean in because, you know, to my shame, before joining Shopify, I wasn't intentional about seeking out a business that was not part of big behemoth companies, right? And marketplaces traditionally. But since I find myself buying from a really wide range of merchants to the point where I sometimes forget the name of the merchant. And I know that's not great. And I think that is a weakness of Shopify. It's like you can buy from all these people and never really know how they are. Shop has become this way that I go and remember the place where I bought this thing that I really liked. And now I want another one, but I cannot remember who it was. And I go back through my orders and I'm like, oh, and they've got this other stuff and oh, and oh, and oh. And I kind of do that in a way that, you know, if I compare to other experiences, it doesn't feel like they're designed for that purpose, but Shop does actually feel like it's designed for that rediscovery. And like, am I community the first time I buy from like a completely new merchant? No, but I certainly am the time I go looking for their product again. And I'm like, oh, now I found you again. I'm like, okay, now I'm really like sold in. And it feels, you know, obviously I'm biased, but I genuinely believe as a buyer, it genuinely feels easier to do that in Shop than through some of the other marketplace products that I have on my phone, you know? which is
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that part of that comes from our heritage as being merchant centric.
yeah.
Right. And we started with a ton of constraints. We didn't go out the gate and say, like, let's create a marketplace. And today I would argue we still don't really consider ourselves one, because we're not just about throwing a bunch of products at you and hoping you'll find something. We've really started from a merchant first constraint in many ways to help tease out that understanding of people really having an affinity with certain merchants and almost like becoming a bookmark for the merchants that I really love.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as like building my own department store around me. So like department stores today, you walk in, there's shoes, there's cosmetics, there's different floors. I have the floors I go to and love.
Yeah.
Imagine walking in and the whole space shifts around you.
Yeah.
And the brands you love are immediately in front of you, but you still have room to explore. And I think we've figured out how to pull the brands that you love in front of you. And now our challenge is to build out the rest of that experience.
Oh, I love that department store metaphor. It feels familiar. The other thing that I love about Shop, and this is going to come over to you, Matt, is Shop Pay.
Oh,
And
Shop Pay.
like I bought from a merchant yesterday, and the little shiver of delight. So I bought from a merchant. There is a book that is being studied at my daughter's school, and it's called A Kid's Book About Racism. And they sent a message out, and they were like, we're going to study this, and we're going to have it in the junior kindergarten class. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go get this book because I want to know what's been said. And the merchant is a Shopify merchant. And
Such
so
a delight.
it's just because I needed to buy this book, and so it was going to happen no matter what. And then I saw that they were a Shopify merchant, and I checked out straight away using Shop Pay, and I've had all the
purple button
notifications. The purple button just kind of really, I don't know, it just makes me feel like it's instant connection, right? So tell us about basic question, Matt, is Shop Pay a wallet? What is it? What should we call it? What is this thing, Shop Pay, that we have built, that we've made available?
It's so many things. I mean, because it had such humble beginnings. This is something that started a long time ago, years and years ago, as the initial experiment. It was an experiment, and the project was just called Remember Me, and it was a Remember Me checkbox on the checkout.
Okay.
Right? And so we built a Remember Me checkbox, and it was like, what would happen if we had a little checkbox on the checkout and would remember your basic details, your shipping and payment details on one Shopify store, and then you could use it on any Shopify store, just sort of invisibly. And then that obviously did very well because it's a great idea. It removes all this friction. And then it turned into this thing that was a wallet that held your information, and also then became an accelerated checkout, where if you had that information stored, you would get what we know as the purple checkout, right? That super fast checkout where all of your information is vaulted, and you click that button. It's what happens when you click the purple button, or it recognizes your email and sends you to that, or you get sort of cookied in and it sends you down that fast flow. It happened to me the other day also. I went and got some new slippers from a Canadian slipper company called Glurups. It's my second pair, and they're lovely. They showed up yesterday, so that was great. Or my Allbirds or whatever, right? So like you have that wonderful experience where you see the purple button, you're like, oh, it's going to be easy this time. That's fantastic, right? And you go through that thing. But it's also doing so many more things now that we've got that information. And that's where we're taking into this point now where it's really Shop Pay as an identity. It's Shop Pay because it has that information, and because it's becoming integrated with the Shop app. And all these things Katarina's working on with shopping, the question becomes like, as these Shop Pay users, so it started off as this little Remember Me thing, and shopping, the Shop app had these humble beginnings similarly as another experiment, as a thing called Arrive. And I think a lot of people will remember that original Arrive app, which was also an experiment, threw it together. What if we threw together a tracking app? And then these things merged together into what we have today as Shop, which that merger has only really been around for a couple of years. But those things have come together now where we have this Shop Pay wallet and accelerated checkout, and we have this order tracking thing, and now we've built a shopping experience on top of it, and they've all come together because of Shop Pay's frictionless checkout, which now exists in the app as well, and because it has all this information that makes this purchasing experience very easy, and we can bring it into that shopping experience, it gives all these opportunities to make a more frictionless shopping purchasing experience, to create more personalized experiences. So I think the opportunities for that as an identity are just sort of limitless.
It's so funny
in the
though,
coming
because
years.
sorry to interrupt, but I was just,
No, that's good.
It's how, like, it's, so thinking abstract from Shopify for a second, but you think about how like services become sticky. And I think back to Nir Eyal's book Hooked, and like that whole framework of trying to design experiences that are addictive, but less about addictive, but much more about like that stickiness value. And like Shop Pay for me, it's like, you kind of get to that accelerated checkout, right? And you see a couple of other options that are really familiar, like, there's your Apple Pay, or I'm going to check out with PayPal or something. And yeah, those are really good too, because they save you having to go look for your wallet. But at this point in my life, I'm kind of going to pick Shop Pay because I get all this other stuff with it too. So the need state has shifted to like the minimum now can't just be, oh, I don't need my wallet. The minimum now is I don't need my wallet, and I'm going to get notifications about when this is coming, and I can rediscover the merchant, and it's in my phone, and it's really nice, and it's really simple. So it's like creating this extra value prop that's just made it much more sticky. And I think the numbers kind of show us that as well. Like Shop Pay is massive. And then the biggest win, which I'd love to hear about, is like Shop Pay existing in places that aren't strictly just Shopify services. So like you can use it now on Meta services like Facebook and Instagram and other places. So what was that journey like, pulling it out of like just your typical online store into like somebody's Instagram shop?
Oh gosh. Right. So that's a whole other, sorry, I need to like rewind in my brain through all of these
There's
steps
so
here.
much context. There's so much has happened to get us here.
Well, I do think there's something really interesting here, which is like, I think this is the product that gets built when you're not thinking about ad dollars. And so to double click on that for a sec, like this is a real flywheel, one that's built around shit people want, right? Like, let's go back, and I like, no shade. Yeah. My entry into product design was through a wonderful internship at Facebook. So I owe them a lot. Let's talk about the Facebook advertising pixel for 2 seconds.
Sure, go for it.
That product ran businesses. It ran a lot of Shopify businesses. The market dynamics have changed. And there was so much you could have built on top of that for merchants, for buyers, integrated experiences. But the lust for ad dollars and growth on top of growth on top of growth. And so we became, some political theorists talk about this as surveillance capitalism, ads running me around on the internet. We can vilify this all we want, but like, I kind of like the ads, This is how we shop. This is how we discover.
Yeah. You can look at how dumb the banner ads were before that. And so like ads you want is an argument.
Exactly. 100%. But ads aren't really the deliverable or the product. Ads aren't like an experience. They're just like this dysmorphic thing following us around in like a distributed, decentralized way, but not any of the good ways that Web3 are bringing. It's like just all over the internet. And to what you were talking about, Lola, like not knowing where to find my merchant. And so to me, Shop Pay is the real product that then loops back into a native experience that allows me to continue those relationships. This is the loop we're talking about. And it's a full end-to-end product that really feels like it's built around people. And I'm obviously super biased. Yeah. But I think that's the benefit of thinking about what do merchants need? And merchants really need this. Yeah. Our merchants need us to be successful here. The market dynamics around internet advertising and the way you find new customers and the costs associated with those is so high that it's kind of become a moral imperative for Shopify to provide something like this to merchants. And I think as somebody who's been working in mobile consumer e-commerce for most of my career, I think buyers deserve a product that's this integrated and that's this high quality and that gives buyers this much control.
Do you know what I love about that? Because, okay, so we're just going to take a full divergence now. We're going to change the script for a second. But there is something important that I think we should acknowledge. And I think in design, you know, we talk a lot about ethics and we talk a lot about doing right by the individual and what it means to be truly human-centered. And then I think you look at the landscape of commercial realities and the fact that business models have to exist because I don't work for free. So as a designer who is values driven, one of my values is to think about ethics in the context of commercial integrity, right? Like, so, you know, as a individual who is a part of a family of entrepreneurs or somebody who cares about my local community, I believe a business has a right to find its income and to acquire customers, and they deserve to make a profit, and we can't live this altruistically driven thing. On the internet, though, that's a really weird conversation to have, because as you just said, Katarina, it's like, hey, we want to talk about ads, and we reject ads almost viscerally as like this ethically immoral thing and this horrid thing that, you know, retargeting follows you around, and it feels, and there's definitely like, don't get me twisted, the spectrum is broad and creep comes way too soon, right? Like there's just a lot of creep ad behavior. But there is a reality that, like, you know, as we were saying, the majority of our merchants are small businesses who do one thing really well or a handful of small things really, really well. And like mom and pop shop in Wisconsin with an online presence is not going to have discovered me in Southwest London without an advert, quite frankly. Like that connection can't exist. And even sometimes literally the store at the end of your road. There is a store at the end of my road that is a merchant that I discovered on Instagram through an ad. And then I was walking to the nail shop and I literally stepped back and I was like, oh, what? And I walked in and I started
Instagram to real life.
Her. Yeah. And she was like, oh yeah, I started on Instagram but we always wanted to have a shop and now we have a shop. And I would not have discovered her. Yeah, I wouldn't have known her brand without the ad. But now I know she has a physical presence. Would I have stopped if I just saw the shop? Probably not, because I didn't see the clothes in the same way. So I feel like ads are this ethical hot potato in like tech and the way designers and people who are values driven talk about them. But they're actually like really important. Like we need them. We need people to find people.
They're critically important.
Yeah.
And the problem is like not, I don't think anybody has an inherent problem with advertising. It's targeting is one problem.
Yeah.
And two, for merchants, it's the lack of choice.
Yes.
Right? Like not having choice is the problem right now.
Yeah.
There are two companies
that you can go through
who drive that market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk for a minute about this whole situation of rising customer acquisition costs and cookies and privacy and this whole like double-edged dilemma?
Do you know what I think
or
is
that
worth
just a rabbit
talking
hole we don't
about?
want to go down?
No. I don't think it's a rabbit hole. Let's talk about it because it's in the context of like designers need to have commercial sense, right? And so as a designer working on a highly important product, we've got to think about the commercials that drive that product. And so in that context, we should have a bit of a conversation about that.
When we talk about like why is Shop Pay on Facebook and Instagram and Google, like that's the answer. It's not just to like get on these platforms. It's to answer this need for customer acquisition, rising customer acquisition costs, and merchants struggling to be able to reach new customers because of changes in privacy and cookies becoming no longer a way to acquire customers.
Yeah.
So,
but this is like but let's do that. So let's talk about why it's important for our merchants to have access to buyers on, you know, Google
channels
and Facebook and Instagram. Like, talk to me about that, Matt, because it you know, there is that conversation that needs to be had about like, how does a small business acquire its customers? And then what are the ways in which we're thinking about that?
Absolutely. And I think this is ultimately going to end with why Shop is so vitally important, and Shop Pay is part of that. So a huge shift that's happened in the last year and a half, 2 years. It's been sort of gradual, but it's really culminated in the last year. Is changes in internet privacy, and ultimately changes to how cookies function and how effective cookies are, and the effects on advertising. So I think everyone, whether or not they're in design, has noticed changes on the web and changes to their devices, whether that's through email updates or these little banners on websites that tell them about, we have to accept that, yes, you have a cookie right now, or whatever, right? Or changes to Safari, which are changing tracking, or ad blockers that are built into your browser, whether it's Safari or whatever. It quickly followed suit by Google Chrome or Firefox or whatever. Right?
And we should probably mention that, like, for good reasons, right? Like, there are, the majority of those are about individual agency and the privacy of personal information, which is important and something that needs to happen. But there's this impact and consequence, right?
Yes. So everything is very, very complicated, right? Like the world is a very, very complicated place, and things have all kinds of interconnected ramifications. So in the giving to individuals, an ability to have more privacy and not be tracked as they move around the web, what that cut off was the ability for cookies to track people moving around, which made ad tracking extremely ineffective, which meant that you couldn't use inexpensive web advertising to advertise to customers as a merchant cheaply, and serve effective ads to customers cheaply and acquire new customers. So that's what we refer to as customer acquisition cost, is how much do you have to spend to get a new customer to see and then ultimately buy your products? How much does it cost per customer to sell a product, right?
And by the way, I just want to highlight that era of cheap advertising sprung so many businesses. What we consider to be, having been a designer in New York over the last 10 years, like the term D2C, right? Like, are you going to work at a D2C company? You're going to work at a tech company? Like, where are you working? Yeah. You're working for a cool brand. The structure of this kind of business is fascinating, right? Because, like, the two most important people at a company is like that, whether you were selling sheets, mattresses, glasses, pick an item from the house.
Wear, trainers.
Workout wear, exactly. The person who makes the thing as cheap as possible, and the person who figures out the ad cost to buy a customer. Those two people do math together on a weekly basis to figure out an entire business model. This is how we get Warby Parker. This is how we get Casper.
Right.
And what's really interesting is that type of business model has been threatened overnight because of these policy changes, which is really, really interesting. Absolutely. And so many of those great brands call Shopify a home. That's where they run their business. And that's why now we're being called to figure out how to truly develop new ways of finding customers, of keeping them, and creating increasingly relevant experiences for them as they launch new products.
Absolutely. So that you've completely nailed it, Katarina, which is this is an existential threat here to especially new merchants. How do I find new customers, right? Like, this is okay. So, like, if you fundamentally ask me, like, what's the difference between Shopify and something like Amazon or Etsy or eBay or any other, like, large marketplace, the central difference is on Shopify, you own your business and brand, and we help elevate you to do that thing, right? On Amazon or Etsy or whatever, they own the brand, and you sell through them to customers. Now, at the beginning of your merchant curve, your entrepreneurial curve, that's like super great, because you just have to have the product, and then you get free customers, right? You just like throw it out there and you get customers, right? On Shopify, it's much steeper, because you throw your product out there and you're just like a little island in the ocean. Like, how do people know about you, right? The problem, of course, is that you see on the Amazons of the world is like, or just, we can just say Amazon, is like, if you hit a certain point in that success curve, you cap out and in fact can frequently get replaced, like that like Amazon basics problem, right? Like, you do too well, you get cannibalized and you're out, right? Like, thanks for showing up, appreciate your service, and we'll take it from here. In the Shopify,
or you've become so valuable to their product mix that your like the value you're getting out of it becomes asymmetric.
Yeah.
Yes, right. So that it's a losing proposition. You do too well, you do very badly, right? With Shopify, like if you can figure out how to get through that early part of the curve, it's all yours. Like you're in charge, you own it. It's your brand, you own it, right? But that first part of the curve is really hard. Like there's no sugarcoating it. Being an entrepreneur is one of the hardest jobs in the world. I've been there, like a lot of people have been there. It's very, very hard stuff. And that customer acquisition is one of the hardest problems. That cheap marketing made it easier. So this is one of the hardest problems that needs to be solved right now. So when we see that like cookies and the open web thing starting to disintegrate, the question is, where does the traffic go? And it's going to go into these other platforms and into apps, into native apps. So we're going to see it on Facebook, Instagram, Google, which is why ShopPay has moved onto those areas, is to give that audience a place to go, and to give Shopify merchants a place to bring Shopify checkout like directly into that place. But also, this is one of the great things that Shop app can bring to the world, right? Is like having a place that is pro merchant, that's pro Shopify, like providing a channel directly to address this problem, right?
So I want to pull the conversation back into like a very designy space, which is the way we operate Shop and Shopify in general is, and I think Katarina, you said this already, it's like the merchant is the brand, and Matt, you alluded to this as well, right? So you own your brand, the themes, you can design your store any way you like. It can look as you want it. The limitations are infinite. And then we do this other thing with Shop where we have to create a place for multiple brands to be discovered. And so how do you make space for a very unique brand? And then on the other side, we're taking something like Shop Pay and we're going and putting it in these other places that are like entire other businesses that are designed very differently. So like, what are some of the design challenges that you're dealing with in this environment where like Shop needs its own identity and experience concepts and primitives, and you've got to create this space where a brand lives by its own story and potentially you're like co-branding with a third party. So there's like a bunch of layers in there. So maybe starting with you, Katarina, like how are you thinking about that in the features or even the way you're designing the Shop app itself? What are some of those challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, I come back to the department store. I've been doing a bunch of like digging into historical just research around the kind of history of department stores and in-person retail and kind of the psychology that went into it. And it's really interesting because like, as people working in e-com and native commerce, we can easily say like, well, these dinosaurs are dying, but they're still here. And I think there's some really important tenets that I have found very helpful in thinking about how we're shaping the experience in Shop. There's a whole range of department stores out there with different brands that speak to different audiences. But one thing that's true of not all of them, but some of them, is that they have to have an answer for the same problem, right? So like take a big department store here in the United States is Bloomingdale's, right? So Bloomingdale's they do two simultaneous things. They have a really strong experience. You walk in there, you immediately know it's Bloomingdale's. The tiles they choose, the way they choose to lay out the store, the brown bag. But they also do something very interesting when it comes to retailing brands, in that each brand has its own expression, its own pop-up or small space within the context of Bloomingdale's, such that you immediately see the logo of Theory or APC or Stella McCartney, and you immediately recognize that brand's expression in the space. And it's quite amazing when you think about it, because when you walk into that store, it's not like overwhelming. It's not a bunch of noise. Yeah. It's like a slight bit of chaos. It's kind of nice because there's always something new to see, because those brands too have their own story and arc that is changing through the seasons. And that has become a really potent way in which I've started to like coax designers into thinking about the right share of voice in the Shop app for where we are today, which is to say, when it comes to a brand, it should feel immediately recognizable in the context of shop. So what are some practical challenges with that? Let's talk about how different brands shoot their product. We don't have centralized product photography. As a designer, when you're going to design a screen, it's a little bit of a nightmare. You're trying to think about this brand shoots things on a white background, and this brand puts clothing on models, and this other brand puts clothing in situ and sand because it's a beach brand. And all this stuff has to live together, and it can kind of feel uncomfortable sometimes. But on the other way, when I think about shopping in-person retail experiences, a lot of these brands are converging in interesting ways. And I think there are moments where we can be really purposeful. For instance, the shop store. So that's the entire experience of how a brand shows up, their kind of micro app within the shop app. We aspire and have a vision for brands to own that space completely, and increasingly are looking to our history with online store to be able to provide that level of customization. We'll have probably a few more experience guardrails such that users know how the app works. But that has been a really helpful way for us to think about how we want to show up in shop. And shop itself needs a point of view. Yeah. We are ourselves a brand competing in a very crowded consumer market that begs for brands with a point of view. It's not going to work for shop to be a platform, right? That just completely is neutered, takes a back seat, and lets content fill the space. Yeah. It's really not going to work for us. Consumers demand a point of view. And when you look at how we merchandise the kinds of stories we're telling with our brands, it's really starting to come through. We're actually just going through a brand refresh now that's going to help pull that, the way in which we think about ourselves forward, which I'm really excited about.
Okay, so a final question on shop, though, because that is a really interesting narrative. And then we've got this other thing, which is the shop mini, which is so we've got the shop app, and then we're going to let merchants use that department store concession model to create their own. And then we've got this thing called the shop mini, which is an app inside an app that is also going to have, I've seen and played with a couple, and they are wildly different to each other and the rest of the shop app. So what's the thinking there from a design, from an experience perspective? How are we thinking about making space for this amount of variability in terms of what the minis will do that the shop app doesn't do, and even just how different they look,
Yeah, there's the look and feel, and then there's the job they serve in the ecosystem. So I'll talk a little bit about the job first. What we think is that there's something true of what we call a core shopping experience. So that's, what's the makeup of a core shopping experience or the ingredients? It's product views, the shop store, search, things that are checkout, things that are really hard to do and build. And while we think in shop and Shopify, we have really strong opinions of what those experiences should be, there's this whole other part of shopping. Shopping from a native perspective is changing constantly. And while it's easy to say that people are downloading fewer and fewer apps, right? By the way, we've been saying that for the last 10 years, and new apps are still coming out and being downloaded on people's phones and are still rad. People aren't downloading apps. They only use 2. I'm not me. Yeah. And increasingly, I don't think a lot of other people. So
I've seen screenshots of Katarina's phone. She
I'm
has
extreme.
More than 2 apps. More than 2 apps.
Okay. Definitely more than 2 apps. But what we see in the market is there's a bunch of entrepreneurs, creative technologists, developers building really cool niche shopping experiences. There's this app network that's focused around cultural drops and kind of hype items beyond sneakers. There's a bunch of really rad stuff happening in the fashion AR NFT space, right? There's a whole app that just launched recently around this. There's a bunch of niche shopping experiences that entrepreneurs still see value in, that they're building communities around. And we think these types of businesses could be launched from shop. And that's where we start to think of ourselves less as a marketplace and more of a super app, a shopping super app that is. So while shop takes care of that core shopping experience and provides merchants the tools and the equip to go find new customers for all the reasons that Matt and I have been talking about, Minis provides this X factor. And that is to say, in shop, we think there are natural extensions of a shopping experience, live shopping, bidding, NFTs, all these other things that are happening in the market. And it being in our DNA from Shopify to provide developer tools and harness the creativity of creative technologists all around the world, we want to build a platform inside Shop that allows people to launch those new businesses and experiments.
Yeah.
Now, from a design perspective, it keeps me up at night, right? I'm somebody who continues to convince herself she can do IC design and wanting to hold all the things, especially as we're developing these things. So it makes me sweat. I've seen some of these internal experiments too, and I'm like, can I go down to fix it? And I have to be like, no, because eventually I'm not going to know these people. I can't just Slack them and be like, can we not with that button? Yeah. It's not going to work. And I also, this is where I have to just, look to the sky and look at Apple sending a great example. And our strategy here is we're going to develop some example minis here at Shopify. And we hope those examples exemplify exactly how we hope they're developed. We're building an SDK to make it super easy and accessible. We hope to develop an SDK that has design components as a baseline, and that we set the bar for the market about what types of experiences we hope to build. Yeah. And we hope to see that bar smashed and exceeded there, but we also want to make room for apps that I might think are subpar, but suddenly find this niche community within Shop, which is pretty cool. So we've got core shopping, we've got the minis experiment, and we think together this is going to make a truly unique native commerce experience in Shop.
So I want to use this as a segue to talk about some of the other conversations we've had in this season of Inside Shopify UX, because you've just said something that is really powerful for me, which is, we had a great conversation about the cultural variance in design and the fact that in digital design, maybe we've not always made room for that, right? So the perception of what is considered good, usable, high quality design for probably 80% of the world is not a Bauhaus or Swedish aesthetic. And the majority of our products that we use in, the North and West kind of have that very, very similar aesthetic sensibility. So I love the idea of creating minis as a space where you're going to see something, you're like, what the heck is this? But it's not for you. It's for the community it serves. And it's probably a great example of amazing design in a very relevant, culturally specific way. And that needs to be able to exist too, alongside anything else that you find affinity with. So I love that. But so one other thing I wanted to bring you in, Matt. We had that conversation about design, but we also had a really great conversation with interns.
Oh, yeah.
And
let's talk about interns.
I have had the best conversations with you about interns at Shopify, and you have personally shepherded waves of interns both into Shopify's internship program and through into other roles. So I'm interested in, how you've always kind of interacted with that intern experience and how you've grown that design culture. Because we spoke to 3 interns from very different backgrounds, an ex-nurse, ex-talent, and then the classic D-school intern, right? So then it's a huge amount of variance in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've never seen an intern program like Shopify's. It's absolutely unreal. I mean, you get to come into this organization, which is, I think, one of the greatest tech companies in the world. And not only that, but I love, there's something so beautifully Canadian about Shopify as a tech company too, that's you get to work at what is clearly one of the highest bars of company around, and yet everyone is so humble and friendly and welcoming, and that Canadian culture still, even that we're fully distributed, just sort of permeates the whole thing. It's lovely. And
I'm bringing some.
I'm still convinced you're Canadian, Matt.
I'm not. I'm from Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania.
I know. I think your accent is starting to show.
I've been here 5 years.
I don't know what it is. I can feel
it's the way I talk, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. See there?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, see? Threw it in there. I've learned how to say A correctly. It's very nuanced.
Oh, that's good.
All right.
I'm still working on it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've got a sauna in the backyard and a canoe up on blocks. I've really assimilated. Anyhow, interns. They join the company, full-time role if they have the hours for it, assuming they're not in school. They work on teams, project teams with everybody else. They are a part of the team. They are a team member working with people at every level of seniority, shipping real projects with those teams all the way into production that are used by millions and millions of merchants that have real impact. They touch the giant money pipes that the rest of us also touch that are terrifying. Like billions and billions of dollars flow through these pipes, right? And interns get to work on this stuff. It is wild. And they have huge impact. I still remember Sadika, who started as an intern and now is...
Sadika.
She's such a talented designer on the team, right? She's been with us for years now.
Yeah.
So when she started as an intern, and her first project was... she did a lot of fascinating UX work in billing, and it ended up just being a button in the billing area. And it ended up saving a lot of money for the company in support fees. But more importantly, the amount of frustration for merchants that went down because of that work was massive. That was her first project in a professional role. Unbelievable that she got to do that. And now she's still with Shopify today, years later, right? People have come from all sorts of different backgrounds. We've seen people move out of retail industry into their first professional job in the tech industry that are now off into other professional roles. We've had people move internally at Shopify from administrative roles, from roles in talent. As they made that sideways we just talked about this, I think yesterday, Katarina, with Jess, about how do people enter UX from other roles?
Yeah.
And my answer was the intern program. I've seen it happen over and over again.
Yeah.
Right. We've seen people, and not just young people my age and older that are shifting careers. We've seen come through the intern program or through Shopify's BCS program. If they're in engineering, they might be back to school, and it's part of their, that has been an amazing program where Shopify actually pays for their schooling in Canada as well. It's just been an unreal experience.
Well, it's also that thing of like, as our practice expands, we kind of had the early days when anyone could kind of get in because it was still so nascent that it was like you just had to have an affinity with it. It didn't matter what your background was.
I got my first internship with posters. I still don't know how they let me do it. It's like, I was explaining that to my team the other day. We had a show and tell, and it was like, bring a thing that changed your life. I don't know. And I brought my student portfolio, and it was full of printed stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, this is how I got a job designing something for phones. And they were like, it's not going to happen anymore, is it? I was like, nah.
Well, but this is the thing with internship, with really strong internship programs, it can, because I think we kind of had that, and then there's been a middle period where it's like you need a qualification in design, and there's thousands of universities with all these qualifications, and you need to go get one. Doesn't necessarily create the best designers. And then I think you get intern programs similar to the one at Shopify. Maybe other companies have them too, where actually the bar isn't a design qualification. No, it is an affinity, the intentionality and the passion, and seeing some of the interns we have in the company, I'm like, everybody needs to groom that, because it literally is creating a cohort of people who are not identikit designers, and they do come and bring all of this new thinking from their own backgrounds into the mix, and it is wild to be able to work with them and nurture their talent, along the way as well. Yeah,
I love that we allow for such a wide range of experience in our interns too. People who are just getting their feet wet in design, all the way to people who have finished their schooling and are ready for their first professional job and might get hired into a full-time position at the end of it, or people who are mid-school and just looking for a little professional experience before they go back and finish their schooling. I've had so many rewarding internship experiences here, but just watching people learn and grow, and quite a lot of them are working at Shopify today. Cheers to the internship program.
Cheers to the internship and our lovely interns, Jason, Nwando, and Sophia, who were on the season. So another powerful conversation that we had this season was around accessibility. And I think this was a bit more of a real talk conversation because, like many other tech companies, like the report card is a C, could do better, kind of thing. And actually connecting back with you, Katarina, as you think about something like Shop as a super app, how are you thinking about accessibility? Like not just like meeting a requirement, but actually like really bringing that inclusion mindset into the way the app's designed, and then the way that we encourage other people to design for the app. How can we grade ourselves as a B or an A even, as opposed to a C?
Yeah. To be somebody who says like, I know would be a total lie. Yeah. So I'll start with that.
Yeah.
I think one of the key things we have going for us right now is Shop is developing its own design system, right? So Polaris wasn't going to do the job for us for obvious reasons. Polaris is designed for work. So Shop needed its own system, and we have a absolutely fantastic design systems team.
Yeah,
this mighty 2-person team right now, and growing, that is helping us develop the design system with accessibility in mind from the jump, right? So we're not having to go back and say, is this thing working right? Important thing for me when I think about accessibility is it's become a central issue in our practices and in adjacent practices, right? Like engineering, it's like a 50-50 split. And the thing that I find a little frustrating where things sit right now is that we design a thing and then it goes through an accessibility check. Now that's out of necessity, right? Like Figma files don't have the tools to tell us whether or not the thing is compatible with everything that it needs to be compatible with. But what often I find happening is that this thing will go into Q&A and then like it'll come back and we'll figure out that like, we're trying to figure out how type sizes should work at these huge scales, right? And I'm like, okay, this isn't designing for accessibility. We are like, we're not designing an intentional experience here where we have this expectation that somebody using large text assistants on their iPhone, for example,
can have a great experience.
Wants to be reading a single letter per scroll. Like, I don't think that's what that person had in mind when they ratcheted up the text size to the largest A on that slider in settings, right? I think what they were trying to tell us is that they need help.
Yeah.
They need help seeing text.
Yeah.
As a designer, I think the job there is to figure out what is appropriate so that the gestalt of the whole thing doesn't just fall apart.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that really, like, now when I'm talking to teams and we're working through these things, when an engineer comes back and says like, this is what it looks like and it's, this is what it means to be accessible. And I say like, I actually think we need to set in this example a ceiling for how for how high that text should go, such that the complete experience it feels thoughtful and not broken for those users. Yeah. And so what I have been asking of the team and what I continue to foster discussions between our engineering counterparts and designers who are focused on these problems is on these opportunities is how do we design those experiences too, rather than just saying when all of these tools are turned on for audiences who need them, that we like that they work. Yeah. It's like such a low bar.
Yeah.
And so I say that like, I don't know everything I need to know as a design leader right now to ensure we're equipped to work towards a future where we're graded at an A, and I need to educate myself on what an A would really mean.
Yeah.
But I know from a design standpoint, from a quality of experience standpoint, that all audiences deserve a well-designed experience.
Oh my God. Preach.
And that we need to design those experiences across the board.
Preach.
Totally agree with everything you're saying, Katarina. I think we could be doing a lot better than we're doing, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there are like two conceptual shifts I would love to see with us in accessibility. One relates very much to what you're talking about. And one is how we talk about an issue of accessibility, like what you're talking about is readability.
Yeah.
So what we often get hung up on, though, and this is, everyone is well-intentioned in this conversation. Like, everyone wants the same outcome. Nobody's in here saying, like, I just want it to be pretty, and I don't care what the outcome is, right? Like, I don't care if half the people can't read it. Like, nobody's saying that. Everybody wants a good outcome. But we get focused on individual best practice because we think that achieves the outcome. So, for instance, there was an argument like, you can't use all caps because that's bad now. And that misses the point of the holistic outcome of readability. Because just because you made it not all caps doesn't mean it's readable. In fact, there are many typefaces where removing all caps could make it less readable if, for instance, it has a very low X height. So, like, refocusing the conversation on this holistic problem of readability takes into account things like the design of the typeface, whether or not it's been set in all caps or not, what the contrast level is, of course, comes up a lot. What is the weight of the face? What is the spacing of the things around it? What is the content density on the page? And then how has it been built? Has it been built in a way that things can be scaled? Does it break when you try to scale it? Well, right? Like, there are so many aspects to the design that there is no single checklist of practices where you check it all and now it is readable. We have to, just like the designer using Polaris, just because you plugged in all the Polaris pieces doesn't mean it's a good design. That's why we have these humans working on it. So
it's art meets science, right? Like, I think that's part of the challenge I have. Is like, right now we're talking about accessibility and designing for the widest range of audiences possible as a science experiment. That, like, I ran it through the contrast checker. And it's at 0.02 and it should be at 0.03. And that's the great difference between B and C. And I'm like, this is like, a kid growing up in the States who didn't do well in the textbooks in school. Like, it makes me feel like standardized testing. Like, this is an art as much as it is a science. And it is just about as much of a quality experience as it is as, like, an experience that is functional. It still is, like, it's design. And I don't know how to say it.
It's hard because no one wants to get it wrong, and it's actually pretty opaque. Like, if you look at government guidelines, they say almost nothing, right? Like 508 is just like, make it work for everybody if it's remotely federal, even if the people are federal or the surface is federal, right? Just make sure everybody can use it. And lots of people have come up with guidelines to try to make sure that happens, but it gets very confusing very, very fast. So when you align on those goals of, like, for instance, it's readable, it's great. I think the other practice that would help a lot, that would build both empathy for the people doing it and find a lot of problems, was recommended to me by Glenda Sims, who's like an accessibility author and just like a great accessibility person, who recommended to me 3 things that you do with your designs that are easy to remember. And it's no ears, no eyes, no hands. Use your design those ways. So use a screen reader yourself. Find out how frustrating it is. You won't catch everything, but you will be mad at your designs at the end of it. And that's great. You experience it yourself. Turn off the sound and find out what happens. Can you use everything, right? Are you using videos and suddenly videos don't work? Well, now you've learned that, right? Try and use things with only a keyboard. See what happens, right? Try not to use your mouse. Try to use
play with it.
Yes. Put yourself in that position. It is not a substitute for doing user testing, but it is the first step. And it builds, more importantly, it builds empathy and has you experience all that frustration firsthand. So you start saying, like, oh no, my designs suddenly feel really bad.
I suck. I need to do better.
I mean,
that's the first step.
I at least can do this and be like, I can't see a thing right now, right? So like, I can do that, and now I have to punch up the font size to make it very, very large, but I could read anything at all, right? And see what happens.
No, I love that. Thank you for that very clear advice, and also for letting me see you for the first time without your glasses on. Because I don't think
you and me both.
It's less interesting.
It's like without glasses on.
It's less interesting.
It's a distant second, though, to when he showed up without a beard one day.
Oh, I know.
Everyone
that was a whole thing. We just got
out.
used to it. Yeah.
Huge thing.
For those who
every
are listening,
meeting I went to, every meeting I went to, people just lost
different
their
person.
minds.
Lost it.
We have one more activity yet to do. This is the final chatterbox / cootie catcher. What did you call it when you were growing up, Katarina?
I have no idea.
But
You didn't participate in these games?
You
As
didn't
a-
play
in middle school?
with the thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
that thing.
Yes.
I don't know what that thing's called.
Okay.
I don't know. We played with them.
That's
we played
the most
with them. I just didn't know I had it.
Zen Buddhist answer you could. It
Yeah,
is what
it's
it is.
just a game. There you go. It was
It
a
just
game.
is.
Yeah, it just is.
They
just
they
is.
did relent. They called them cootie catchers in my middle school. That's what they called them.
Cootie catchers.
That's what you slacked us about.
Yeah.
I got no context,
context.
Slack, cootie catcher
Yeah.
from my colleague
Yeah, yeah.
Matt Griffin and was
You didn't know what it was.
concerned.
Yeah.
the game
Sorry.
of many names. Cootie
1991.
catcher,
Middle school.
fortune teller,
Got it.
chatterbox. So here it
Fortune
goes.
teller.
There are 4 options to start with: a banana, a cart, a lettuce, and a rocket. You pick one, and then I will go through, and then you pick a number, and then I'll ask you a question.
How did the
So,
banana get in there, Lola? How did the banana get in there?
I
I
don't
understand the
know.
other ones.
I don't know.
Because
I'm
commerce.
just the person who
Shopify-
runs the thing.
Got it.
I just,
You needed something yellow.
we needed something else other than the other
Yeah.
3.
Got it.
So
Please continue.
Katarina, you first. Pick one.
Cart.
Okay, C-A-R-T. There are the numbers 1, 2, 5, and 6. Pick one.
1.
1. Then you have the numbers 4, 3, 7, and 8.
7.
7. And your question is, what is your process for starting a new thing?
I thought it was going to be like what I have for lunch.
What is your process for starting a new lunch?
A process for starting a new thing. I presume we mean in the context of design. It typically means, which is like, I feel antithetical to what we like teach and lead and talk about. I literally open up Figma and I start
So you go straight
moving
into
stuff,
Hi-fi
the
like
designing.
drawing stuff.
Yeah.
Hi-fi design it.
Well, not always hi-fi, but like I need to make a thing.
To think of a thing.
And I'm a horrible,
yeah.
I'm a horrible drawer. I can't draw anything. So I get into Figma and
You start with lighting effects. That's where you begin. Your good rim lighting on, and then you go from there.
We've had all the versions: thinking, doodling, sketching, writing. I do writing.
Yeah.
I need my notebook, which
Oh,
is
no
always here.
thinking
No,
happens.
yeah.
Just straight
Definitely
into the thing.
Yeah, no thinking happens. It's just
An empty void.
It's kind of like a
Picking colours and moving
subconscious
things away.
emergence of an idea as well, which can also be good.
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Matt, where do you want to start?
You're welcome.
rocket ship.
Rocket.
Classic Shopify.
Rocket. You have 1, 2, 5, and 6.
I'm also 1. I'm going 1.
Okay, 1, and then you have 4, 3, 7, and 8.
4.
Question number
like the
4
yellow- I like the color yellow.
Ooh. If you could go backwards or forwards in time, where would you go and why?
This is not the first time I've had this question. Our good friend
Oh.
Rebecca Sir gave me this question years and years
Okay.
ago when we worked together before Shopify. And I never came up with a better answer to this question, so I'll give you that answer I gave her like 7 years ago.
Okay.
I would go 32 years into the future, which is the difference in age between me and my 12-year-old son, Argus. And I would go meet Argus at the age that I am now. So
That
we
would
could
be
meet
so
each other
cool.
as equals and see what that's like. I want to know what that's like.
Meeting an adult version of your child,
Yeah.
but being at the same age
Yeah.
as them. That is
Not-
probably the coolest thing.
Not waiting until I'm like 75, but like meeting
No.
him now as the same.
So you just
moment.
like, hey, August, let's go for a drink. And then
What's
you just go
happening?
for a drink. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you now? Like, what's happening now with you? And I'd be able to relate, you know? It wouldn't be a father-son relationship. It'd
They
be like
definitely
friends.
wouldn't listen to you, though, I feel like.
No.
Your whole authority would just
That's the
gone.
point. That's the
I
point.
mean, but
I
that
wouldn't
doesn't
want
happen
authority.
for very long either.
Yeah. I just want to
Or-
listen to
okay,
him at
fair.
that point, right? I don't want to tell him anything. I just want to. He's already heard 44-year-old me. He's done with that. He
Right.
got that.
But hearing you
years
as
ago.
a 44-year-old man himself would be super interesting.
Yeah.
Like, how does an adult
Right?
reason with knowing their father at the same age? I don't know. I'm time warping myself.
And you're
but
like,
I
Dad,
actually
I've
think
got some notes for you. I've got some notes for you, Dad.
Now that I
Since
have
you're
got
going
to the
back,
same
are you going
place,
back? Are you going back? If you're going back, I have
here's
notes.
some things not to do to traumatize my life.
Yes, please.
Ah.
Please, please, please. These are from my therapist. These are from me. Here you go, Dad. Take these back with you.
Those are fantastic answers. Thank you both so much for that. Okay, so as predicted, we talk a lot. And so we are really getting to the boundary of how long this episode could be. But I did want to leave our audience with maybe a final thought from each of you. And I want to link it back to the conversation I had in this season with Monica, Sadia, and Jen Rogers about leading design in an organization this big.
That was a great one.
And, you know, you are both leaders, senior leaders in the company over really big product areas with very big teams and like lots of different disciplines reporting into you. What would you say is like a key piece of advice or a tip that you've learned for leading at this level in an organization like Shopify or within the product area that you've got that might be useful for someone else to bear in mind in their journey?
I'm just going to take notes at what you guys said.
Yeah, I'm recording this bit. Like when I grow up.
I'm ruined here because I had the same answer as Katarina, so now I'm in trouble.
Our bad jokes are merging.
I was going to take notes on Katarina and then go back in time and answer. No, I've got an answer, but
Go
do
on.
you want me to go? You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Gentlemen first.
Yeah.
Oh jeez. All right. My best advice for leading at Shopify is
Or leading in general. Right. In a org like this.
at a big company. Well, this is the only company I've ever been a leader at of this size, and I've been a leader at this company at many sizes because it grows like crazy. It just keeps doubling and doubling. You know, when I joined, I'm pretty sure it was like 4,000 people, and now it's well over 12. I think something like that. I don't know if I can say that publicly,
what the official number is. Yeah.
Yeah, it just grows every time I go to the announcements channel to see how many people are in there. It just gets bigger and bigger. Anyway, it just keeps getting bigger. Here's what I've learned. Forget everything. Like forget that it's big. Forget that it's a big company. Forget how smart and brilliant everyone around you is. Forget that the giant money pipes you're working on, because I used to work on money and now I work on Shop Pay. Like I work with the checkout that have billions and billions of dollars flowing through them. Like forget all of that, because it's terrifying if you think about it too much. Mm-hmm. How smart everyone is, how high these stakes are. Like just forget it all. Just go do the thing. Like if you see a problem, go fix it. If you see a vacuum, go fill it. If you see something going wrong, go do it. Don't worry about the org chart. Don't worry about what you work on. Like a year ago, I saw something going wrong in an area that wasn't mine. And I asked my lead, do you mind if I go try to fix that? And she said, no, go for it. That seems right. That seems more important than anything else you've got on your plate. Go do it. And I said, okay. And so I went and did it. Sometimes you have to elbow your way into a thing just to make it happen. But if it seems like the right thing for the company and the right thing for merchants, it's worth it. You just go do it. And you do it your unique way. We are all unevenly shaped, right? Like I got some great advice from someone we both worked with on money, Kaz, one time, which is like, and Cynthia actually gave me similar advice too, our VP of UX, which is don't like file down your sharp bits. That just makes you flat. And then what good is that, right? So just lean into your sharp areas. You know, that's where you're great. That's what makes you who you are.
I don't think there's a file strong enough.
For me? For me or for all
either of us?
Either of us. Yeah.
All of us, probably.
I take it as a compliment. But
They
like,
can have a
because
go.
I just realized at that point, like, I just want to get even more pointy at those spots and just even more of what makes me me. At Shopify didn't hire me for my weaknesses. They hired me for my strengths. I just keep leaning into that thing and that thing and that thing, and forget all the lack of confidence and the doubt and all that stuff. Just forget it. And if you have a really honest conversation with those people that you look up to and you think, oh my gosh, that person's so amazing, if you have a really honest conversation with them, they have all the same doubts and all the same worries. And they're looking around and saying, who are all these amazing people I work with? Because we're all humans. So that's my best advice, is just let it all go. Do your thing. Do it your way. And when you see a problem, go after it, and just have that impact by doing what the company pays you to have a great impact for merchants. And it'll go well. It'll go well.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, sure. Katarina.
Right. I think I'll yield my time of giving leadership advice and just talk about one thing that's important to me in the work that I do as a leader, designer, partner, and all things that we do, is the importance of fostering a design culture. Even as big as this place gets.
That's a good one.
And as, engineering focused we are at times, product focused as we are at times, that the practice of design is something that can be applied anywhere in a multitude of ways. We talked about it in the accessibility discussion.
Yeah.
And I think something that has happened in this, like, if somebody talks to me about designers having seats at tables, I'm going to jump through a window. Like, we're here, the seat, take it. What I don't know. The metaphor is so tired to me.
We got the seat years ago.
But on the way to doing all of that, like, we forgot about how fun what we do is. And
tell me about
the sense.
Oh my God.
Look at, like, you guys are like, oh my God. It's like, why are we having that response? And so, and part of that, speaking of being pointy,
I forget that when I'm in the room with the both of you, though, I have to say. I forget that we forgot about fun. You are so much fun, both of you.
You guys are too. Guys and gals. That part of that too is like being opinionated about design. Yeah. Something that Toby said in the first episode, I think that was the episode that opened up the season.
Episode 2 or 3? 3. Yeah.
Fact check. Can we have a fact check?
Yeah.
Fact check.
Yeah. Episode 3.
Michael, fact check.
You guys were talking about this a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think he or you said the thing that wins the popularity contest is the least objectionable.
Yeah.
And that just is
like,
poof.
Yes.
Like, so good.
Yeah.
And I think, and then people get nervous about this subject, right? Because everybody in UX maybe doesn't consider themselves a designer, which is a naming issue and a branding problem. Yeah. But like, even though there are different practices, we are all still designers. And one thing that is true that doesn't have to be scary, and that I believe in, is that a high level of connoisseurship is just as important in the quality of design as the people capable of making it, right? So like, just as it's important to have those like superstar designers who can craft and do all those things, is an audience of people who understand what good looks like.
Yeah.
And fostering that, Sadia talked about this in the leadership conversation, fostering that in your team is a responsibility of leads. It's a responsibility of peers. It's a responsibility of everyone. Fostering that culture and expanding on what that means to be increasingly inclusive is really important. And so that's something that, I don't know if I do a good job of it. It's something I strive for. And it's something that I want all of us. It's something that I want everybody to lean into, is the connoisseurship of design. We don't all need to be crafters, but we should create an environment where that craft is celebrated, where it's recognized, and we can just support each other in trying to go for it.
I mean, Katarina, if you haven't just described all the things that I feel in my gut on a daily basis.
In the gut.
I can't add to that. I honestly, that is the perfect way to sign off this episode and this season. I am so grateful for the wild variance of conversation we've had, but that we end on that note.
That was good.
And for the season, to the audience that's followed us for this entire season, like, this is why I love design. It's because it's rife with complicated problems and passionate individuals and a constant urge to do better. But it's also rich with people who are cultivating that connoisseurship. I hope you've enjoyed listening to us talk today. I hope you've enjoyed all of the episodes. If you're interested,
And
go
shout
back.
out to the host.
Oh my God.
Before you sign off, Lola, I couldn't think of a better host.
I didn't.
These episodes have been amazing.
You know what? I didn't want to interrupt you, Lola, but since Katarina interrupted you, I am going to interrupt you. We're not going to sign off perfectly. No, I'm going to.
I had the perfect like last line.
I know, but
I know.
I'm going to mess it up because I need to riff on what Katarina said and thank you publicly because. Seriously, because I know I agree with this so much, and the strong opinions thing is so important. At some point in my past, Cynthia, our VP of UX, told me that one of my greatest traits was having strong opinions.
Yes.
But when I first met you, so Lola, you were my lead for an unfortunately brief period of time.
Too brief.
Like 4 or 5 months, right? And when I first met you, I was having a crisis of confidence. And I was having trouble with I told you I'd lost my compass and I needed help getting that back. And you did. You helped me get that back. And by the time I left you and went on to shop, I felt like I had retrieved that. So I just wanted to thank you for helping me like right my internal ship and get back to that point where I had those strong opinions again and I could trust myself and do that role because it's one of the most important roles we do as design leaders and UX leaders. So here we are forever on YouTube. Thank you so much, Lola.
We might edit this bit out, but okay. I appreciate the appreciation, and I'm grateful for you guys going on this content journey with me, and for all of our listeners for listening in and sharing feedback, and also sharing this podcast with everyone else. So it has been an absolute pleasure. And for the last time in season 2, I've been Lola Oyelayo-Pearson, and it was a pleasure. So that's it. Thank you for listening to season 2 of the Inside Shopify UX podcast. If you've enjoyed this season and you're intrigued about the things we're working on, apply for roles at shopify.com/careers/UX. And don't forget to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. Inside Shopify UX is hosted by me, Lola Oyelayo-Pearson.
Produced by Jen Shaw.
Assisted by Isabel Hamel-Karasi.
Edited by Michael Bussa.
With art and graphics by Alicia Giroux.
Danny Chavez-Ackerman.
And Trevor Slovani.
Music by Silent Quiet Spaces.